Alright, this is Big Boss, Fox Sound Woodsball, coming to you from Fort Lauderdale, and from my blog page over at outerheavenpaintball.blogspot.com. I'm also repping the guys from Acid Tactical, so you could check them out over at acidtactical.com. Anyway, for all you guys that know me personally outside of paintball and everything, some of you guys might know that I definitely love my action movies. I love my shoot 'em ups, I love my war movies, my war dramas. And I could talk to you about some of the stuff that inspired some movies, some behind the scenes stuff, anything like that. However, for this particular one, I want to go a little more in depth to a lot of things. I'm going to be looking at the 2003 Antoine Fuqua movie, Tears of the Sun, starring Bruce Willis, Monica Baluchi, and you also got in there guys like Cole Hauser and a few other names I forget at this particular time, but I will, for all intents and purposes, do a little bit of a rundown on the plot, maybe give my opinions about the movie. And the meat and potatoes of this, I'm going to be looking over the uniforms, weapons, and equipment carried by the main cast of Navy SEALs, and maybe touch a little bit on the rebels, but I have yet to determine that one. You'll just have to watch and see. But before we get into any of that, let's have a word from our friends and sponsors over at acidtactical.com. We'll be back right after this.
Rules of engagement.
We're already engaged.
Lieutenant A.K. Waters, played by Hollywood action icon Bruce Willis. Waters is the driving force behind the movie, both as a character and narrative-wise. He's not just the SEAL team commander, but he also acts as a counterbalance to the more emotional scenes played by his opposite, the lovely Monica Baluchi. For Waters, he is torn between following orders and shepherding the innocent to safety. For him, this is a crisis of conscience of untold proportions that plays out throughout the movie. Okay, when it comes down to gear, Waters is fairly straightforward. All his stuff is set up on an old school style web kit. That means a GI issue pistol belt. This one is going to be the LC2 model with the black Fastex quick release buckle. 2 Alice magazine pouches, which could each hold 3 30-round Stanag mags and 2 M67 frag grenades. Canteens, radio, butt pack, a knife hooked up to the harness. On the BDU belt, it's going to be a pair of twin Blackhawk pistol mag pouches, and that's pretty much all she wrote about that kind of stuff. However, there are two pieces of kit that's going to be difficult to find, namely the Black Hawk Special Operations H suspenders. They don't even make these anymore, and these are a moon rock to find these days. You can still find them in black, but the hardest one is the OD variant. The other one is going to be pictured here, which is the Black Hawk Enhanced Butt Pack. This is also from a time when Black Hawk was doing their own line of web gear similar to the Alice system with their own proprietary BTS system, though you can still run Alice clips on it. As far as his primary weapon goes, Waters uses an M4A1 carbine with a Knight's Armament Riz rail, I believe it is. Aimpoint red dot sight. It also would have a backup iron sight, which would be folded down. And this one would be a 14.5-inch barrel with the step in there for the grenade launcher. Now, for us paintball players, it's going to be a fun one. Your base marker should be a Tippmann TCM because of its resemblance to an M4 carbine, plus its magazines will fit into the basic Alice magazine pouches without a problem. Modifications that you'd have to do is get a longer barrel, an AR style sight tower, switch the stock out, and that should be pretty much it. Now, for pistols, on the other hand, in this case, we're probably going to be using Tiberius or the Tippmann TPX. For airsoft, on the other hand, you can always find the Mark 23 SOCOM, which is the one Willis was using in the movie.
LT. Those Africans are my people too. For all the years that we were told to stand down and stand by, you're doing the right thing. For our sins.
Before he was the fire chief of House 51 on Chicago Fire, Eamon Walker played Z. Now, as far as his position in the dynamic of the group goes, Z holds 3 different positions. He's the team's second in command, which means he'll take charge of half the team if they split off into 2 separate elements, and Waters will take the other guys in the team. He's also a grenadier, and he's also the team's radio guy, so he's responsible for being the lifeline between being on the ground and higher ups, as we'll see throughout the movie. Now, finding his gear loadout and what he carries has been a very difficult prospect, but here's what I've got to go on. Now, what's on his left leg is going to be something like this. This is a Black Hawk Omega double magazine pouch. Each pouch holds 2 30-round Stanag mags for a total of 4. Other than that, it's a basic loadout, 2 military issue Alice canteen pouches, Black Hawk enhanced butt pack. On his back is going to be a SATCOM radio system, which is a long-range radio system for communicating with higher ups. Now, his primary role is also a grenader, so he's wearing something like this grenade vest pictured here. This vest was designed and developed during the Vietnam War and was used originally for guys with the M79 and later the M203. This vest served on into GWAD even. Now, his primary weapon is going to be something like this pictured here, which is a M4A1 carbine with the Knight's Armament rail, Aimpoint red dot, M203 grenade launcher. However, what Z doesn't use in the movie is the graduated leaf sight for use with the grenade launcher. Other than that, he's got the Heckler & Koch Mark 23 SOCOM pistol as a secondary weapon, and carries with it a Knight's Armament sound suppressor, which was very standard for this particular mission profile. The other weapon that he's seen using is going to be a Navy-issued Mark I deck knife, which isn't here right now, but it's used in the movie.
Lee, keep your eye on the package.
Roger that. Holding.
With movies like The Package and The Hostage under his belt, Chad Smith plays the role of Flea. Now, Flea is the team's marksman, but he's also a team's point man as well. Being that the mission setup is more of a 3-day LARP and they're in thick triple canopy jungle style terrain, his weapon makes plenty of sense for that particular thing. Now, when it comes down to it, Flea is more of a supporting character, but he's definitely there. He sees the world through his sniper scope. He sees all the bad things that are going on, and he has to make split-second decisions about whether somebody will live or die. That fills his crosshair. Now, with that being said, Flea's also a pretty cool character in that sense because he is a sniper. He's a man of few words and everything that is supposed to be a sniper when you think about it. Now, that's pretty much the movie for him in a nutshell. I'm not going to spoil anything about it, but let's have a look at some of his weapons and gear. Now, you can see Flea wears a LBV 88 tactical load-bearing vest like the one pictured here. Unlike Kelly Lake, Flea doesn't modify his gear whatsoever as far as his vest and everything. He's got a camelback hydration bladder on his back, very similar to the one pictured here. However, I would assume that this is an early generation military model that came out with the Molly system when it was first being issued in the late 90s, early 2000s. Now, as far as his primary weapon goes, it's going to be the one pictured here, an M4A1 carbine with the Riz rail system, just like the one pictured here. However, the one pictured here, the cheek riser is different. The other thing that makes Flea's weapon stand out from the rest, aside from a Knight's Armament suppressor, is the fact that it utilizes the rear sight carry handle as well. I could easily assume this is for better height over bore when you're doing precision shooting, and it also uses a Law's rocket in the final battle. Other than that, it is unclear whether he uses a HK Mark 23 SOCOM pistol or a 6-hour P226 as his secondary weapon.
How about you, Red?
I can't look at them like packages anymore. I'm gonna get them out, or I'm gonna die trying.
Now, before he was making Cowboys Manly again and Cooter's Wet on Yellowstone, Cole Hauser played Red. Now, Red is a Team 60 gunner. His main job is to lay down heavy fire for the guys, but he also can set up ambushes and the perimeter for the team when they stop. Now, as far as the movie goes, Red is more neutral in how he sees things. He's questioning some things because Dr. Kendricks is an American only by marriage. However, as the movie goes on and they witness the atrocities being committed, after that, Red is committed to getting the refugees to safety, or he'll give up his life to try. And let's look at his gear. Now, Red's gear is pretty straightforward. a modified Black Hawk tactical vest. This one has one of the utility pouches removed for a double mag pouch for the pistol, and the radio pouch that would be on the left shoulder is removed to accommodate a what would be like a SOG seal pup knife. Also attached to his belt is going to be his radio. He's got 2 additional large magazine pouches to carry belts of 7.62 by 51mm ammo for his primary weapon, which would be an M60. Now, those pouches would be like the one pictured here, which is a U.S. military issued Alice box mag pouch that would be used for either a 200 round 5.56 belt for a saw or a 100 round belt for the 60. On the back, he's got a Black Hawk Stomp, or not sure what the particular model name of this is, but basically a Black Hawk butt pack, as well as most of his other gear is Black Hawk with the exception of a few other things, but I digress. His primary weapon is going to be the one pictured here, which is an M60 E3 light machine gun. This is an evolution off the Vietnam era M60. Now, where the U.S. Army chose to keep the original M60 until it was replaced by the M240, the Navy and the Marines upgraded to the E3 variant, which was made more famous by the Navy SEALs. Now, his secondary weapon is going to be the Heckler & Koch Mark 23 SOCOM pistol, utilizing a double-stack 12-round plus 1 to pipe capacity. This is able to fire 45 ACP plus P ammo and is usually paired with a Knight's Armament suppressor.
I can't leave him, sir.
Best known for movies like Star Trek Into Darkness and Bright, Charles Ingram here plays the role of Silk. He's a team sniper. Now, Silk is just like Flea. They see all the atrocities unfolding through a high-powered scope, and they're the guys that make that split-second decision about somebody's living or dying by the pull of the trigger, if they so choose to do it or order to do so. Needless to say, with that being said, Silk's character is pretty much one of the underdeveloped ones, same as a couple of the other guys on the team, but there's enough in there to give you a good idea on where he's from and stuff like that if you watch the extended edition. Other than that, seeing these atrocities, that's one of the reasons why it was a no-brainer for Silk to say that he's all in on making the final push to get the refugees over the border into Cameroon. Now, talking about weapons and gear. Silk's weapons and gear setup are fairly simplistic because he's a sniper. He's using a standard issue GI pistol belt with a Black Hawk Special Operations H harness like one Lieutenant Waters is using, but he's also got Black Hawk BTS pistol mag pouches on the strap. And as you can see, these are the suspenders in question. Otherwise, his gear is fairly straightforward. Pistol belt, harness system, comms gear. And here's a real funny thing. You look at the back as shown here. It looks like he's got a nylon version of the M1956 butt pack strapped to the back of a Black Hawk assault pack. The other hard to find item if you're looking to recreate this is going to be this magazine pouch, which was their answer to the LC2 Alice pouches. This one utilized a wraparound Velcro strap system that was proprietary to Black Hawk, but it also used Alice clips at the same time. These things are hard as hell to find these days. Other than that, His primary weapon is going to be an M14 rifle. This was pretty much America's final battle rifle, shortest lived service rifle, but it definitely made a comeback as the M21 during Vietnam, as well as being brought back into service during the global war on terror. For Silk, this is his best weapon because of its accuracy and its ability to use a high-powered optic for it. His secondary weapon is going to be a Sig Sauer P226 pistol, like the one pictured here. 9x19 parabellum, double stack mag, double action trigger. This thing is used by the Navy SEALs as a standard sidearm next to a Glock.
Been going at it all day.
With movies like Training Day and Con Air under his belt before 2003, Nick Chinlund does pretty damn good as the character of Slow. Now, Slow is the team's saw gunner. He's carrying serious firepower for the team, but there's more to it than that for him. He's also carrying a computer system in his gear that allows him to look at satellite images of their operations area. This is how they were able to find out that they had enemy forces on their heels when they were moving refugees to Cameroon. Now, with that being said, the character of Slow is kind of underutilized, or more of a secondary character in the grand scheme of things. However, everything he does still carries a significant emotional impact, which is an oxymoron in one reason or another, but regardless, great actor for a pretty good role when you really think about it, especially for a project as deep as this one. Now, as far as his weapons and gear go, Slow's using a modified Black Hawk Isaac machine gunner's rig, with the particular detail being that the front saw pouches, or i.e. machine gun ammo pouches on the front, are removed. This allows him to be a little more mobile, especially when moving in a prone position. However, that being said, just a couple pouches up front for pistol ammo, comms gear, stuff like that, all can be carried in the Isaac rig without a problem. Plus the sling system on the back between the shoulder straps to put a Law's light anti-tank rocket on the back. His primary weapon, on the other hand, is going to be the FN M249 squad automatic weapon, aka the assault gun, but this is the paratrooper configuration with the retractable stock and the shorter barrel for close-in work. However, he does not carry any kind of sights on this weapon system. Other weapons that he would have would basically be the knife and HK Mark 23, though I couldn't tell definitively if he had that particular weapon system.
My opinion, sir, we cut our losses. This isn't our fucking war. As far as me being in a rat, you know the answer to that.
Before movies like Hostage and Spartan, Johnny Messner plays Kelly Lake. As far as the team dynamics go, Lake is the team's point man. his primary responsibility is to scout ahead of the unit and find potential booby traps and potential ambushes. Now, as far as his character development goes, Lake comes off as very cynical. He doesn't give a damn about the mission either way you cut it. Though that doesn't mean that he's not loyal to his brothers in arms, because he has no issues giving his opinion about the mission, though as far as him being in or out, you already know the answer to that one. With that being said, Lake will not hesitate to jump into the fight when needed, but as a side note, here's a nice little side-by-side, and we can see where the guys at Activision, Treyarch, and the guys behind the Call of Duty series got their inspiration for one of the more iconic Call of Duty Modern Warfare characters, John Soap McTavish. Now, moving on, as far as his weapons and gear go, Lake uses a modified LBV-88 tactical load-bearing vest like the kind pictured here. What makes the vest unique is that the grenade pouches are relocated off to the left side of the vest. Other than that, he's running the basic Black Hawk enhanced butt pack, 2 Alice canteens, and that's really about it, aside from his radio system, his push-to-talk, and so on and so forth with the weapons and gear. However, being the point man, Lake also has some unique configurations. One of them being his primary weapon, M4A1 carbine with a aim point red dot, as well as what looks like a Knight's Armament suppressor mounted on the business end for his role as a point man. Otherwise, he's also running a Black Hawk Omega Elite shotgun shell pouch on his left leg for his alternate primary weapon, which in this case is going to be a Remington 870 12-gauge shotgun. Now, the reason why for a shotgun is pretty obvious. If you're running in dense triple canopy jungle, a shotgun is going to be a devastating weapon, especially up close and personal. Now, the special modifications that are done to this are fairly straightforward. He's got a side saddle on the left side of the shotgun's receiver, so that way he has quick access to ammo to do reloads while under fire. His secondary weapon, on the other hand, is going to be a Heckler & Koch Mark 23 SOCOM pistol with a Knight's Armament suppressor to go with it.
Ma'am, may I assist?
Are you a doctor?
No, I'm a corpsman, ma'am.
Can you stitch?
Yes, ma'am.
With the writing and directing credit for the movie One Whore, and prior to Tears of the Sun being known for movies like Pearl Harbor and Warlock 3, Paul Francis plays Doc. Doc is a guy who runs 2 roles within the team. He is the team's second grenadier, meaning he's lobbing 40mm grenades downrange, and he's also the corpsman, i.e. the medic. He basically takes care of the guys when they're wounded, takes care of them, make sure that they're healthy enough to fight, anything like that. Now, here's another fun fact. You notice around Doc's left wrist is a rosary. Now, that could indicate that he's either a devout Catholic, he was in seminary school before joining the Navy, or he was a chaplain's assistant before becoming a SEAL. When you think about it, Doc is pretty much the guy who's the more empathetic type of the team, but other than that, let's look at his gear. Pictured here is the Black Hawk Omega Grenadier rifle vest. Now, this is definitely a solid setup to hold 6 30 round mags as well as 840mm grenades. But to be screen accurate, you have to go with an older generation, which is pictured here, that utilizes the BTS webbing to add on Alice pouches. Newer versions of this vest will have Molly on the back. Now, going over to the screen setup for it, the utility pouch was removed to have a larger pouch attached for other items, such as trauma bandages, stuff like that. His gear also consists of a knife, a double magazine pouch, his push-to-talk for his comms gear. But if you'll also notice something interesting about the collar of his BDU top, the collar is practically removed and modified to be non-existent. Also, the right sleeve is the only one that has a pocket attached. Now, you can even say that this is kind of like a scrub shirt for doctor stuff, since he is a medic. The back consists of his radio pouch, a Alice 2-quart canteen, and a general purpose pouch which holds a frag grenade and probably other medical kit, and a Black Hawk medic bag. Doc's primary weapon is going to be an M4A1 carbine, like the one pictured here. Definitely similar to the one that Z uses as well, and not having the leaf sight that's attached to the top. Now here's where things kind of diverge. Doc's secondary weapon is going to be a Sig Sauer P226 pistol chambered in 9x19 parabellum, which doesn't have the ability to mount a suppressor, but has been a long-time favorite for Navy SEALs. Starting off is going to be the M4 carbine. This one is pretty much the workhorse throughout the entire movie. You'll see it in just about every character's hands with the exception of a few. From a bare basic kind of configuration like what Lieutenant Waters carries to precision instrument like what Flea would carry for doing Overwatch jobs, or a similar kind with Z, but him and Doc are the guys carrying the big boys, and Lake, well, you guys are going to get the idea. Lake is usually a no-frills kind of guy as far as weapons configurations go, but then again, you guys get the idea. Now, paintball markers to work for this particular setup, like the one pictured here. This is the classic Tippmann X7 with the M4/M16 parts, buttstock, carry handle, front end, front sight post. You can see it again here, this time on the Tippmann X7 Phenom, its successor. Now, you can still find these markers secondhand, but still good options. Here I've got my personal X7, that's a mag-fed conversion setup from Takamo, their older MK7 kit with a response trigger, just to give you guys an idea about what you can do with this particular marker if you're looking for this particular weapon. However, if you're doing a out-of-the-box solution, the Tippmann TMC is going to definitely be your best bet when it comes down to having a AR or M4 style marker to use if you're looking to recreate any kind of weapons platform like this. One of the more devastating weapons in the SEAL team's arsenal is going to be pictured here. This is the FN M249 Parasaw, saw being the squad automatic weapon. This particular one pictured is used by SLO. It's the paratrooper model, noted by the shorter barrel and that unique telescoping buttstock. Now, this is something that SLO uses very much in his time on screen and is very maneuverable considering the fact that it's pretty much a belt-fed light machine gun spitting out a 5.56 on a disintegrating belt link. Now, with that being said, through the movie, you get to see this weapon's power as it lays down the hate to provide cover for the team and protect the refugees. Now, to build this as a paintball deal, you've got a couple options. Option one is to buy a customized build from some company like Rap4 or today's Modern Combat Sports, like the kind pictured here. The only problem is it doesn't have that unique telescoping buttstock. However, the feeding mechanism here is more unique, utilizing a Q-loader feed system, the precursor to modern MagFed. The other option pictured here is to get a body kit for the Tippin A5 as a base marker, which is also sold by Modern Combat Sports. You can find these on eBay, Amazon. I think Obscure still sells them. After that, it's just using a E-trigger or response trigger. The M14 was considered the shortest service life of any service rifle in the United States military. However, its long-range accuracy and hard-hitting 7.62mm round definitely made it a firm favorite among snipers. This, and outfitted with a fiberglass stock and a sniper scope, turned it into the M21 sniper rifle. Now, this weapon is pretty accurate for Navy SEALs, and in the movie Tears of the Sun, it is shown to be a very potent weapon in the hands of Silk, the team's sniper. Now, with that being said, this weapon is shown to very good effect. However, as far as a paintball build goes, this is kind of tricky, as this is one of the more extreme custom builds out there, and parts are very difficult to come by. The M60E3 light machine gun is probably one of the most devastating weapons in the Navy SEAL's arsenal. This thing was pretty much an evolution off the M60 during the Vietnam period, and is still considered one of the more badass and iconic weapons used by Navy SEALs. Cole Hauser's character Red uses this to great effect in the movie, and it's definitely one of those that has its place as far as an action movie gun, but also definitely a devastating one at that. Now, as far as paintball goes, this is going to be difficult. This is where you're going to have to do some modifications, such as this one pictured here using a T68, and it also has a box magazine underneath, so it is a mag-fed conversion to this. Other than that, if you want to do it yourself, you're probably going to have to use something around the lines of an airsoft kit to do the job. The Automat Kalashnikov 1947. This is the quintessential weapon of bad guys across the world and in popular entertainment. The one pictured here is going to be the definitive AK-47, noted by the lightning cuts above the magazine well. Now, in Tears of the Sun, you'll have multiple variations of the AK-47. Doc carries one throughout the movie on his back. Other than that, you got versions made by China as the Norinco Type 56. You've got the AKM pictured here with an underfolding paratrooper stock and a stamped steel receiver. You can tell that by the dimple above the magazine. Regardless, this weapon is in abundance throughout the movie, usually in the hands of the militias that are going around slaughtering people, the rebel Nigerian soldiers that are loyal to the new government, you can say in the movie. But after the village scene, the refugees begin picking it up so that way they can defend themselves against the rebels that are coming after them and the Navy SEALs that are protecting them. Now, as far as paintball guns go, Here's one pictured here. It's an AK setup on a classic Tippmann X7. And over here is going to be the same thing, except on the X7 Phenom. Now, these will happen to be more second-hand market these days, but Takamo produces the mag-fed conversion kits. Pictured here is the Vortex, the Blizzard, and the Tornado. The Vortex being an A5, Blizzard being the 98, Tornado being the classic Tippmann X7 made by MCS, Modern Combat Sports, and the one they didn't picture is going to be the Hurricane. Pictured right here based on a Tippmann X7 Phenom for all your mag-fed conversion glory, but if you are looking for the most hardcore, realistic AK magazine-fed marker, then you guys got to go to the Czech Republic and check out the guys over at hardstylepaintball.com. I'm going to be completely blunt when I say that Tears of the Sun is probably the most criminally underrated movie ever. Yes, behind the scenes, if you look at some of the stories that go on in Hollywood, yes, there was a lot of bickering between Bruce Willis and the movie's director, Antoine Fuqua, but with that being said, yeah, they both had two competing differences on movies, but the movie overall was very good. It wasn't as violent as the fourth Rambo movie, but it got the point across, and with that, it's like, you can't say that they didn't try to explain things. Now, there are two versions that came out. There was their theatrical release, and then there was their extended special edition, or extended director's cut. I forget which one it is, but it had additional stuff in there that also added on the political context and the murder of the presidential family, which helped to establish the villains, which established the main antagonist. And without a doubt, I would say that that particular scene, it did good for those who were not familiar with the movie until that particular version, but needless to say, it got the point across about tribal violence. And I could go on a tangent about how all this is stemming from the decolonization policies of the United Nations and the majority rule policies that were imposed by the UN in the aftermath of World War II, but that would be a subject for a different time. However, this movie is praised for its attention to detail on the more military scenes, the more tactical scenes. This is thanks to Harry Humphreys, himself being a veteran of the Vietnam War and a former Navy SEAL himself. His presence and influence on the movie was to make sure that these guys acted like Navy SEALs, how they moved, used their weapons, communicated, and from a standpoint of my being a civilian, however, I've known a lot of guys that were in the military. I knew a lot of guys that were in combat arms, and I will have to say that the attention to detail that Mr. Humphreys puts into this was definitely something to be deserving of the praise that it received. Other than that, I would say that even without Bruce Willis, even without the stuff that made this movie what it was, there was still enough of the political context and the violence that you could have taken this, given it to the guys that are doing Tom Clancy related content from Ghost Recon, Rainbow Six, and they could have turned that into a story or even a mission in a video game. However, I will say that This movie deserved to have gotten more praise than what it received.
Okay, now, I hope you guys liked what you saw. I hope you guys can understand why I feel this movie is criminally underrated in today's movie world, especially with how asinine Hollywood is with movies. Now, some of it could range from feel-good propaganda movies for civilians to this very dumbass, like not even worth straight to download type deal that Hollywood has been doing in the past decade or two. I will say that this movie is definitely something that should be ranked up there with movies like The Expendables as far as good action. But other than that, I'll let you be the judge on that. If you guys want to see a written version of this, check out the article over at outerheavenpaintball.blogspot.com. I will be putting links in the description to this channel or video about where I got the information on some of the lowdown on what the SEALs are carrying and stuff like that from my research. And finally, if you guys need cool Molly kit or you need some rail accessories for your paintball gun, airsoft gun, or your real steel firearms, don't forget to check out my friends over at acidtactical.com. And remember, when the shit hits the fan and you've got to trust your gear with your life, ask yourself this one question: can your gear survive the acid test? Also, don't forget, Outer Heaven Paintball and Acid Tactical also have Teespring shops. Check those out. And with that, this is Big Boss, and I'm out of here.